The house smelled like vanilla frosting and fresh flowers. Streamers curled down from the ceiling, twinkling lights shimmered against the walls, and a pink princess throne sat proudly at the center of the living room. I had planned this day for weeks, my baby girl's very first birthday. It wasn't just a party. It was a promise. A promise that even if she was too little to remember, she would look back one day through the photos and see how deeply loved she was, and the crown jewel of it all, a custom-made 3-tier castle cake. $800 of sugar fondant and pure magic. Towers spiraling upward, little princess figurines smiling like they had stepped out of a fairy tale. I stood there proud. Relieved. Everything was perfect. But perfection never lasts, does it? Because that's when my mom walked over, wine glass in hand. She was laughing loudly, waving her arm as if the whole room was her stage. She really went all out, didn't she? She told my aunt, her words dripping with mockery. For a baby who won't even remember this. What a waste. And then it happened, her elbow. One careless swing. The stem of her wine glass clipped the cake table. In slow motion, I saw it, the wobble, the tilt, and then the crash. The castle tumbled to the ground, splitting into pieces, frosting exploding across my polished hardwood floor. Little fondant princesses lay scattered like broken toys in the wreckage. Gasps filled the room. My mother looked down, then laughed. Oh, oops. Well, honestly, you always go overboard anyway. It's just a baby. But before I could even process that blow, another one came. My sister Jessica had her phone out, recording the whole thing. Giggling. "Oh my god, this is priceless," she cackled. Straight to Instagram. Caption, "When you spend more on cake than people spend on groceries for a month." The room erupted in laughter. Not one hand reached out to help. Not one word of comfort, and just like that, my perfect day shattered. Just like the cake on the floor. The room didn't just echo with laughter. It vibrated with it. Not the warm kind that fills a family gathering with joy, but the sharp, biting kind. The kind that cuts through skin and settles deep into your chest. I bent down, staring at the ruined cake, trying to hold my expression steady. The frosting was still dripping from the edge of the table, pink and white smears staining my hardwood floor. My daughter whimpered from her high chair, her little voice drowned out by chuckles and smirks all around me. And then, as if destroying the cake wasn't enough, my sister Jessica strutted over. Still laughing, phone in hand, replaying the video she had just captured like it was the highlight of the year. She turned the screen toward my aunt and cousin, and they leaned in, giggling. My face, frozen in shock, looped over and over on her phone screen. "Look at her expression," Jessica wheezed, barely able to breathe through her laughter. "I swear, this is going viral. People need to see this." Then, without ceremony, she shoved a crumpled gift bag into my hands. It looked like it had been sitting in the back seat of her car for weeks, wrinkled. Grease-stained, the kind of bag you'd use to carry leftover fries. Not a present for your niece's first birthday. "Here," she said, smirking. "This is from us." I reached inside, praying for something thoughtful, anything that might soften the sting of her mockery. But instead, my hand wrapped around a cheap, broken plastic toy. One wheel was missing, the packaging was already torn open, and worst of all, a neon clearance sticker still clung to it. 50 cents. I stared at it, stunned. Jessica shrugged. "Sorry, my kids played with it first. But hey, she's only 1. She won't know the difference, right? Besides, you already spoil her enough. A busted toy won't kill her." Her laughter rang out again, harsher this time. My aunt chuckled nervously beside her, though I could see the unease in her eyes. But no one stopped Jessica. No one said it was cruel. It was easier to join in the mockery than to stand beside me. I wanted to say something. Anything. But before I could even form words, my father stood up. He clutched his beer bottle like it was a microphone, and suddenly the room grew quiet, waiting for his wisdom. He raised the bottle in the air, his voice booming as if he were delivering a toast at a wedding. "Maybe now," he declared. "You'll finally learn not to waste money trying to impress everyone." Laughter erupted again, scattered applause echoing through the living room. "We raised you better than this show-off nonsense," he continued, smirking proudly at his own words. "Real families don't need $800 cakes or fancy decorations to celebrate. What you did here?" He gestured broadly at the ruined party. "It's not love. It's just vanity." My Uncle Bob, already tipsy, raised his drink and shouted, "Hear, hear," as if my father had just given the speech of the century. A few relatives actually clapped. My cousin Mark nodded along, grinning, like my father's cruel words were some kind of sacred truth. I stood there, clutching the broken toy bag, my cheeks burning. Every instinct screamed at me to cry, to yell, to defend myself. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because I realized something in that moment. This wasn't new. This was tradition. For as long as I could remember, my family had mocked me. For dreaming too big. For working too hard. For wanting more than they thought I deserved. Whenever I tried to do something special, they cut it down. Whenever I tried to celebrate joy, they turned it into a joke. And now, on my daughter's first birthday, they weren't just mocking me. They were mocking her, my little girl who had no idea what was happening. My baby who deserved a room filled with love, not ridicule. Her tiny face scrunched up, tears streaming down her cheeks as she cried in her high chair. Not because of the cake, not because of the noise, but because she felt it too. The tension. The cruelty. Babies always know, and yet, no one rushed to comfort her. No one even tried. They were too busy watching me, waiting to see if I'd laugh it off, apologize for being too much, or crumble under their judgment. That's when I noticed the phones. Not just Jessica's. Half the room had their cameras out now, snapping pictures of the ruined cake, recording my silence, capturing my humiliation, like I was some sort of circus act. I looked around the room, at my mother smirking into her wine glass, at my sister clutching her phone like it was a trophy, at my father basking in the glow of his cruel toast, and something inside me snapped. They expected me to bend, to smile through the humiliation, to clean up the mess while they laughed. But I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Not this time. Not ever again. The room felt smaller by the second. It wasn't just the laughter anymore. It was the way every pair of eyes locked on me, like I was the evening's entertainment, the punchline to a cruel family joke. I stood frozen, my daughter crying in her high chair, the broken cake sprawled across the floor like a battlefield. My hands gripped the crumpled gift bag so tightly the paper tore under my fingers. No one noticed. No one cared, because this was a performance, and I was their unwilling star. Jessica angled her phone, whispering loudly enough for the room to hear. Oh my God, her face right now. Look at her. She looks like she's about to burst into tears. The cousin snickered. My aunt pressed a hand over her mouth, trying to hide her grin, but her eyes betrayed her amusement. Even my uncle, the one who usually stayed quiet, was chuckling, shaking his head as if I had brought this all on myself. I wanted to scream, "She knocked it over." Not me, she did this, but what good would it have done? In this room, truth didn't matter, perception did. And the perception was clear. I was the fool, the show-off, the overspender, the one who thought she was better than everyone else, and my family loved nothing more than to cut me down to size. My father, still standing with his beer bottle like a king addressing his court, smirked at me with that familiar look. The same look he gave me when I got into college on scholarship, when I landed my first big job, when I bought my own home. It wasn't pride, it was resentment. Maybe now you'll learn, he said again, his voice booming as if it carried the weight of wisdom. This is what happens when you try to act like you're better than the rest of us. The applause, the cheers, the laughter. It all blurred together until it was nothing but static in my ears. And in that static, something inside me began to shift. At first, it was just a flicker. A tiny flame of defiance buried under years of swallowing my words, of smiling through their jabs, of pretending it didn't hurt. But as the laughter grew, so did the flame. I looked around and realized they weren't just mocking the cake. They weren't even mocking me. They were mocking everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made, every ounce of effort I had poured into giving my daughter a life better than the one I had growing up. To them, it was all a joke. The castle cake, the decorations, the photographer, the money I had spent, none of it mattered. Because in their eyes, I would always be the child they could belittle, the one they could drag back down whenever I dared to climb too high, and suddenly, I wasn't just angry. I was done. Done playing the clown in their circus. Done apologizing for caring too much. Done carrying them on my back while they laughed at me for it. I took a deep breath, my chest rising and falling like a wave crashing against rocks. I could feel every muscle in my body tense, every nerve sparking like live wires. I thought of the months I had spent planning this party, the late nights scrolling through Pinterest for decorations, the extra shifts I had taken to pay for the cake and photographer, the hours I spent making sure every tiny detail would be perfect, not for me, but for my daughter, and then I thought of all the other times. The Christmases, where I bought the gifts no one thanked me for, the vacations I paid, for that they complained about, the bills I covered while they rolled their eyes at my need to control everything, and here they were again, laughing in my face. The flame inside me roared to life. I could almost feel my heartbeat in my fingertips as I pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking. They were steady, controlled, cold. If they wanted a show, I was about to give them one, but not the kind they expected. Didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw the broken toy at Jessica's smug face. Didn't crumble into tears the way they wanted me to. No, I smiled. Just a small, sharp smile that made Jessica pause mid-laugh, She tilted her head, confused, like she wasn't sure what she was seeing. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't going to end with me begging for their approval. This wasn't going to end with me apologizing for caring too much. This was going to end on my terms. The room thought they had broken me. But what they didn't know was that I had already been carrying the matchbook in my pocket. And tonight, they had just handed me the spark. The breaking point wasn't when the cake hit the floor. It wasn't when Jessica shoved that broken toy into my hands. It wasn't even when my father mocked me in front of everyone. The breaking point was when I realized something so simple, so freeing, that it nearly made me laugh out loud. I didn't owe them anything. Not my money, not my time, not my forgiveness, nothing. And the moment that truth settled in my chest, I knew exactly what I was going to do, with my daughter crying softly beside me, frosting still dripping from the ruined table, and a dozen pairs of mocking eyes waiting for my humiliation. I opened my phone, and I started to type. The laughter still rang in my ears as I pulled out my phone. Every chuckle, every smirk, every mocking word, they were fuel. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I didn't even look at them. I simply tapped my screen, one deliberate motion after another, while they kept watching me like I was about to fall apart. But I wasn't falling apart. I was setting fire to everything they had ever taken for granted. The first tap opened my travel app. My fingers scrolled smoothly, almost automatically, until I reached the confirmation email. 12 passengers. Premium balcony suites. All-inclusive dining. A European cruise worth $15,000. Their Christmas surprise. The one gift that was supposed to bring us all together. I had imagined revealing it with a smile. Imagined the joy on their faces. Imagined them finally seeing how much I cared. How much I was willing to sacrifice, but that fantasy was gone. Now. They had crushed it beneath their laughter just as surely as the cake lay crushed on my floor, so I hovered over the glowing button that said cancel. Booking, for a split second, I thought about my mother's face when she'd first see the tickets. How my father would have bragged to his friends about the big trip his daughter had treated him to. How Jessica would have plastered Instagram with photos of her in a bikini on the deck, pretending she had paid for it herself. And then I thought about the ruined cake. The dollar store toy, the cruel toast, the laughter. I tapped. One confirmation later, the cruise was gone. Vanished. Somewhere across the world, a travel agent's computer dinged. Seats reopened. Someone else would enjoy that trip now, but it wouldn't be my family. Not ever. The room hadn't noticed yet. Jessica was still busy showing people my shocked expression on her phone, basking in her 15 seconds of internet fame. I scrolled again, switching apps this time. My bank account. My co-signer details. There it was. Jessica's shiny white BMW. The car she couldn't afford without me. The car she bragged about as if it were her own accomplishment. I remembered the day she begged me to co-sign. How she had sworn up and down she'd make every payment. How she said she needed the car for work, for her kids, for her image. I had believed her, I had signed for her, and she had never once thanked me. Now, she stood just a few feet away, mocking me with a broken 50-cent toy in my hand. Recording me for her amusement. My thumb slid across the screen. Remove cosigner. My heart pounded. This wasn't just a button. This was leverage. This was freedom. I hit confirm. The loan was no longer my problem. Her fancy car was no longer my burden. Let her laugh when the repo truck showed up. Let her film that for Instagram. Finally, I opened the joint account. The one I had been depositing into faithfully, month after month. $800. Every single month. Helping with the mortgage, the utilities, the little extras they couldn't manage without me. I had told myself it was the right thing to do. That family helps family, that I owed them for raising me. But staring at the frozen frosting on my floor, listening to their cruel cheers echo in my ears, I realized the truth. This wasn't love, this was dependence, this was control. They didn't clap for me when I succeeded. They clapped when I fell, and I was done funding their applause. My thumb hovered over the pause transfers button. I could almost hear my father's voice in my head. Real families don't need fancy cakes to celebrate. Maybe so, but real families also don't mock their daughter in front of a room full of people while holding her money in their pockets. I pressed confirm. The account froze. $800 a month, gone. Let them figure out how real. Families pay bills without the daughter they love to belittle. I locked my phone, slipped it back into my purse. No one noticed a thing. They were still laughing, still recording, still waiting for me to explode. They thought I was silent because I was broken. But my silence wasn't weakness. It was execution. Every tap I had made was a blade cutting the strings they thought bound me. And they didn't even realize the show was over. I looked around at their faces, Smug, entertained, expectant. My mother sipping her wine, pretending her clumsy elbow had been fate, not sabotage. Jessica smirking at her phone. My father basking in his cruel spotlight, and I smiled again. A small, knowing smile. Because while they thought they had humiliated me, I had just pulled the floor out from under them. The cruise? Gone. The car? Gone. The payments? Gone. They wanted a show? They were about to get one, only this time, I wasn't the fool. I was the one holding the script. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with the sound of laughter that wasn't laughter at all. It was mockery, sharp and cutting, echoing off the walls like knives. But inside me, silence, not the silence of defeat, the silence of decision. I slipped my phone back into my purse, its black screen holding the weight of every choice I had just made. They didn't know it yet, but the cruise, the car, the payments, all of it was already gone, and with that, so was I. I turned toward the high chair where my daughter sat, her tiny face red and blotchy from crying. Her little fists clenched and unclenched in the air, reaching for comfort, for safety. I bent down and scooped her up. The moment her body pressed against mine, she hiccuped softly, her sobs slowing as she buried her face into my shoulder. That was the only sound that mattered, not the laughter. Not the jeers. Not the sarcastic claps. Just the heartbeat of my daughter pressed against mine. I grabbed her diaper bag from beside the chair, slinging it over my shoulder. My keys jingled faintly in my hand, the metallic sound strangely grounding in the chaos. No one noticed at first. They were too busy laughing at Jessica's video, too entertained by the cake catastrophe to see what was happening. But then as I walked past the ruined cake, my shoes sticking slightly to the frosting smeared on the floor, the laughter began to fade. One by one, the phones lowered. Conversations hushed, eyes turned, because they realized I wasn't cleaning it up, I wasn't apologizing, I wasn't playing along, I was leaving. Wait, where are you going? My aunt asked, her voice unsure, as though she wasn't certain if this was part of the act. I didn't answer. Jessica's voice cut through the silence, sharper than ever. Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic. It's just cake. Still, I didn't answer. My father let out a scoff, muttering under his breath, always running away when things don't go your way. But his words rolled off me like water. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't running away. I was walking out. There's a difference. Running. Away is leaving because you're weak. Walking out is leaving because you're strong enough not to stay. I shifted my daughter on my hip, kissed the top of her soft little head, and headed for the door. My mother's laugh floated after me, dripping with condescension. Oh, honey, don't be ridiculous. You can't just leave. Everyone's here to celebrate. Accidents happen. Sit back down. We'll cut another cake. Another cake. As if the one I had spent months dreaming about, saving for, planning around, was replaceable. As if my feelings were replaceable. I kept walking. The room stirred behind me. I could feel the weight of their eyes on my back, the confusion settling in. They weren't used to this version of me, the version that didn't beg for understanding, the version that didn't apologize for caring too much, the version that didn't stay to play the fool in their cruel circus. With every step I took toward the door, I felt lighter, stronger. Every laugh, every sneer, every cruel word stayed behind me, trapped inside those four walls. I reached for the doorknob. The cool metal pressed against my palm, steadying me, reminding me that this was real. For a moment, I paused, not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted to remember this moment, when I chose myself, when I chose my daughter, when I finally decided that enough was enough. I opened the door. The laughter, the voices, the toxic energy spilled out behind me, but the night air rushed in, cool and refreshing, washing it all away. I stepped out onto the porch, the world quiet again, except for the soft coos of my daughter and the steady rhythm of my own breathing. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing the noise inside, and just like that, I was free. Free from their stage, free from their mockery, free from the family that had mistaken cruelty for love for far too long. I strapped my daughter into her car seat, my hands moving with calm precision. She looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes, as if sensing the change. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and she smiled, a faint, tired smile that broke me in the most beautiful way, because in her little gaze, I saw the only audience that mattered, not the ones holding their phones, waiting for me to stumble, not the ones clapping when I fell. Her. My daughter. And I knew right then that she would never grow up thinking this kind of treatment was normal. She would never learn that cruelty was disguised as family tradition. She would never believe that her worth depended on someone else's laughter. Not if I had anything to do with it. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away. The house grew smaller in my rearview mirror, its glowing windows flickering against the night sky. Somewhere inside, they were probably still laughing, still mocking, still recording. But it didn't matter, because for the first time, their voices couldn't reach me. All that mattered was the road ahead, the soft breathing of my daughter in the back seat, and the peace settling into my chest like a long-forgotten song. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I didn't give them the reaction they wanted. I just walked out, and in that silence, I won. The house faded behind me as I drove into the night, its laughter sealed away, muffled by distance and time. For the first time all evening, I could breathe. The air outside was cooler, softer. It didn't carry the sting of judgment or the weight of expectation. It was just me, my daughter, and the quiet hum of the car engine beneath us. She fell asleep within minutes, her little chest rising and falling in the rearview mirror. The faint glow of the streetlights passed over her cheeks, painting her in moments of gold, and for that brief, fragile stretch of road, I allowed myself peace. But peace doesn't last long when you've just shattered the illusion your family built their control on. By the time I pulled into my driveway and carried my daughter inside, my phone was buzzing. Once, twice, then again and again, until it sounded less like a notification and more like an alarm. I set my daughter gently in her crib, kissed her forehead, and let her tiny hand rest against mine until she drifted deeper into sleep. Only then did I pick up my phone. The screen glowed in the dark, a storm of messages, a swarm of missed calls, 22 notifications in just half an hour. I opened the first one. It was Jessica. Of course it was Jessica. Jessica, OMG, are you seriously mad about the cake? You are so dramatic. Everyone's still laughing about it. I posted the video and it's already getting likes. You should thank me, honestly. My stomach tightened, but I kept reading. Jessica. Also, where did the cruise confirmation go? Mom just checked her email and it's gone. Did you cancel it? Tell me you didn't. The laughing emojis made my jaw clench. She thought it was a joke. She thought I'd bend, laugh with her, explain it away like always. But I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through the rest. Mom. Honey, I think there's been some kind of mistake. The travel agent says our booking disappeared. Can you check your app? I know you wouldn't cancel it. That must be an error, Dad. Call me now. This isn't funny. Fix the cruise or don't bother coming around here anymore. Aunt Lisa. Sweetheart, your dad's just upset. But maybe you did overreact a little. It was just a cake. Let's talk it through before you do something rash. The words blurred together. Excuses, justifications, thinly veiled accusations. But then Jessica's messages lit up again, one after another like firecrackers. Jessica. Wait, did you remove yourself from my car loan? What the hell, are you insane? Jessica. They're going to repo my car. Do you even realize what you've done? Jessica. This is beyond petty. Over a cake? You're seriously ruining people's lives because you can't take a joke. I sat down on the couch, the glow of the screen illuminating my face, my heart steady in my chest because here it was, the first taste of fallout, the panic, the anger, the disbelief. And still, they didn't get it. To them, this was about cake, about frosting on the floor and a ruined party. But it wasn't. It never was. This was about years of disrespect, of sacrifices unnoticed, of kindness treated as weakness. The cake was just the final straw, the loudest crack in the dam. I put the phone down on the coffee table and let it buzz against the wood, the sound rattling like an angry hornet trapped in a jar. They wanted me to respond. They wanted me to explain, to justify, to apologize, but I wasn't going to. For once, I wasn't rushing in to fix everything. For once, their panic wasn't my problem. I leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes. For the first time in years, the silence around me felt safe, strong, mine. The phone buzzed again, vibrating so hard it almost slid off the table. I glanced at it. Jessica again. Jessica. You think you're so smart? Just wait, I'm posting everything. People are gonna see what a selfish, spoiled brat you really are. A slow smile spread across my face. Let her post. Let her spin the story because the truth had already been written, and it wasn't me who looked like the fool anymore. The night stretched on, the phone buzzing every few minutes like waves hitting the shore. Messages piled up. Missed calls stacked higher. The anger sharpened, the pleas softened, the accusations twisted into bargaining. But I stayed silent, not a word, not a single response. Because silence, I realized, was the most powerful answer of all, And as the clock crept past midnight, my daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This was only the beginning. The first thing I heard that morning wasn't birdsong, or the soft coo of my daughter waking up in her crib. It was my phone, buzzing, ringing, screaming like an alarm I hadn't set. I rubbed my eyes, sunlight pouring through the blinds, and saw the screen light up again and again. Dozens of missed calls. New messages flooding in faster than I could count. It was barely 8 a.m. I scrolled through the notifications, one by one, as though I were flipping pages in a story I'd already guessed the ending to. The anger from last night? It was still there, but now, desperation had joined the chorus. Mom, 7:12 a.m. Sweetheart, please call me. I barely slept last night. Your father's furious, and I don't know how to calm him down. Can't we just fix this, please? Dad, 7:19 a.m. This has gone too far. You will call that travel agent and reinstate the cruise today. You are humiliating this family. Do you hear me? Today. Jessica, 7:31 a.m. They're saying I only have 14 days before they take my car. 14 days? Do you even care what you've done? My kids need rides to school. You're heartless. Then came the voicemails. I pressed play. And my living room filled with their voices, layered in anger, panic, guilt, each one trying a different weapon to break me down. Mom's voice cracked, trembling. Honey, please, your father's blood pressure was sky high last night. He kept pacing, yelling. I thought he was going to collapse. Do you want that on your conscience? Over a cake? Over a silly little accident? Be reasonable, baby. Then Dad's voice, hard and sharp like a knife. Ungrateful. That's what you are. After everything this family has done for you, this is how you repay us? With cruelty? With vindictive games? Call me back right now before you do something you regret for the rest of your life. I didn't press pause. I let every word flow through me. And for the first time in years, it didn't sink hooks into my chest. I wasn't a child anymore. Their threats weren't shackles. Their guilt trips weren't chains. They were just noise. By 9 a.m., the tone had shifted again. The texts came softer, almost pleading. Mom, sweetie, maybe we didn't show enough gratitude yesterday. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin the cake. You worked so hard and it really was beautiful. Can't we just move forward? Your daughter deserves a happy family, Jessica. Look, I was just joking. That's what I do. You know me. Don't take it so seriously. I'll even delete the video if that makes you happy. Just please put yourself back on the loan. I can't do this without you, Uncle Bob. Hey, kiddo. Sorry if I laughed too hard last night. You know how I get after a few drinks. No hard feelings, right? So, any chance you can still spot me for that cruise money? My boss already approved the leave. I laughed out loud, a real bitter laugh that startled even me. Uncle Bob, still angling for a free vacation while the world around him crumbled. Some people never changed. By late morning, the desperation had turned theatrical. Another voicemail from Mom. Your father hasn't eaten since last night. He says he's done with you forever if you don't fix this. I can't lose my husband and my daughter at the same time. Please, baby. I'm begging you, a text from Jessica. The repo guy called. They're already monitoring my account. This is literally ruining my life. I can't believe you'd sabotage your own sister just because you can't take a joke. Another one, minutes later. You think you're teaching us a lesson? You're not. You're just proving you're bitter and jealous. Nobody's ever going to side with you. You'll end up alone. You'll regret this. Her words stung for a second. Not because they were true, but because I knew she wanted them to be. She wanted me to feel small. She wanted me to crumble like before, but I didn't. Not this time. Instead, I closed my eyes, listening to my daughter giggle in her crib, reaching for the stuffed bunny I'd placed beside her. Her joy was untouched, pure. She didn't care about cruises, or loans, or mortgages. She cared about the love in her home, the peace in her world, and for once, I was choosing to give her that, without letting my family's poison seep in. By noon, the messages slowed. Their energy, their fury, their rehearsed guilt trips, all of it was burning out. I imagined them in their kitchens and living rooms, pacing, wringing their hands, arguing among themselves, trying to decide who would break me first, who would find the right words, the right leverage. But they didn't realize something. The person they were trying to break no longer existed. The old me. The one who swallowed her pain, who smiled through disrespect, who fixed every mess they made. She was gone, and in her place stood someone they couldn't control. Someone who had learned the quiet power of saying nothing. I put my phone face down, silencing the last buzz, and walked into my daughter's room. She looked up at me with eyes full of innocence. Reaching out her tiny arms, I scooped her up, holding her close. The world outside was still buzzing. still begging, still burning, but in that moment, all that mattered was her. And the promise I made silently in my heart. She would grow up knowing her worth. She would never accept mockery as love. And she would never, ever doubt that her mother chose her over everyone else. By the afternoon, the messages changed again. The sharp edge of anger had dulled. The desperation of the morning had drained. Now came the excuses. The justifications. Each family member stepping forward like actors on a stage, delivering their lines in a play I knew by heart. Mom's act. The martyr. Her text came first. Long paragraphs spilling across the screen. Sweetheart, you know how clumsy I am. I didn't mean to ruin the cake. I was just talking, laughing. It was an accident. Can you really punish me for that? For something I didn't even do on purpose? Another message followed seconds later. And yes, maybe I laughed. But that's how I cope when things go wrong. I wasn't mocking you. You always take everything so personally. Please try to understand my sense of humor. Her words were polished, rehearsed, like she'd been crafting them all day. She ended with the dagger she always used. I am your mother. Doesn't that count for something? I let the message sit there, glowing on my screen. A question she already knew the answer to. Dad's act. The patriarch. His tone was different. His words clipped, forceful, but strangely defensive. You think I enjoyed that cake getting ruined? You think I wanted to embarrass you? I was trying to teach you a lesson. That money doesn't buy love. That family doesn't need extravagance to celebrate. Another message quickly after. Maybe I was too harsh. But that's my job as your father, to guide you, even when you don't like what I say. If you can't respect that, then maybe you've forgotten what family means. Respect. Always respect. But it was never mutual. Jessica's act, the victim. Her messages buzzed non-stop, rapid fire, like she couldn't let the silence swallow her. I was just joking about the cake. That's what I do. Everyone knows I'm the funny one in the family. You always take it the wrong way. And the gift? Okay, maybe it wasn't perfect. But I've got 3 kids, I'm busy, I don't have time to shop like you do. At least I brought something. Isn't that better than nothing? Then came her favorite trick, turning her own choices into my cruelty. Now my car is at risk. My kids are crying because they don't know how we'll get to school and soccer practice. Do you want to traumatize them? Do you want them to suffer because of your grudge? The words were daggers aimed at my heart, but this time, they missed. Uncle Bob's act, the opportunist. His tone was the most ridiculous of all. Hey kiddo, I think maybe you misunderstood me last night. I wasn't laughing at you, I was laughing with everyone else. It's just what we do at parties, you know? No harm meant. Anyway, about that cruise, if the spot's still open, maybe you could just rebook me. Or at least refund my ticket. I mean, come on, don't let one little accident ruin everyone's plans. He still thought it was about money. About tickets and vacations. He didn't realize it was about something far deeper, and something he'd never understand. Cousin Mark's act, the peacemaker. His message was shorter, sweeter. Hey, I don't want to get in the middle, but maybe you should just forgive them. They didn't mean anything by it. Families fight. It blows over. Don't let pride ruin relationships that last a lifetime. The classic line, don't let pride ruin it, as if pride was the problem, not disrespect, not mockery, not years of taking and taking without giving back. No, to him, the problem was me daring to say enough. And then came the group messages, a family thread, buzzing to life like a swarm of bees. We all love you. You know that, Dad. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, Jessica. You're destroying this family, Uncle Bob. Just rebook the trip and it'll all be fine. Cousin Mark. Everyone's overreacting. Let's just calm down. Message after message. Justification after justification. They wanted to rewrite the story. They wanted me to believe the problem wasn't their cruelty, their disrespect, their mockery. No, the problem, according to them, was me. I set my phone down, my chest rising and falling, my daughter playing quietly beside me on the living room rug. She babbled to her toys, stacking colorful blocks, oblivious to the chaos outside our walls. For the first time, I saw the truth with clarity. Every excuse, every justification, every guilt-soaked plea, it all boiled down to the same message. You're not allowed to hold us accountable. And in their eyes, I was the villain, not the mother who laughed at her own grandchild's ruined birthday. Not the sister who mocked generosity with dollar store scraps. Not the father who turned cruelty into a speech. Not the relatives who cheered the humiliation. No, to them, the villain was the one who finally said no more. I looked at my daughter, her tiny hands clapping as the tower of blocks tumbled down, her laughter filling the room like sunlight, and I knew, in that moment, that I could live with being their villain, because for her, I would be the hero. Out of everyone in my family, Jessica's voice was the loudest. It always had been. She was the one who turned everything into a performance. The jokes, the eye rolls, the cruel little comments dressed up as humor. She was the one who laughed the hardest when the cake hit the floor. The one who recorded it, replayed it, posted it like my pain was her comedy special. For years, she wore her smugness like a crown, because she thought she was untouchable, because she thought I would always be there to clean up the mess behind her. But now her crown was slipping. It started with angry texts, sent at lightning speed. Jessica, 9:03 a.m. You seriously pulled out of my loan? What the actual hell? Jessica, 9:07 a.m. Do you even realize what this means? They're already sending repo warnings. They'll take my car and then what? You think I can just Uber my kids to school every day? Then the panic sharpened into insults. Jessica, 9:12 a.m. You're evil! You've always been jealous of me, admit it. You hate that I have a nicer car, a better life. This is your way of trying to drag me down to your level. I stared at her words on the screen, and all I could think was, better life? The same better life she could only afford because I'd co-signed her loan? Because my credit, my responsibility, my trust had carried her through? Her life wasn't built on her own foundation. It was built on mine. And the moment I stepped back, the cracks began to show. By mid-morning, her tone changed again. The insults gave way to begging. Jessica, 10:05 a.m. Please, just put yourself back on the loan. I swear I'll pay on time. I'll never be late again. Jessica, 10:11 a.m. I'll delete the video. I'll never bring it up again. I'll even buy your daughter a new toy, okay? Something nice. Just don't let them take my car. A new voicemail came through minutes later. I pressed play and her voice filled the room. Shaky now, frantic. Look, I know I mess up. I know I make jokes. But that's just me, okay? That's how I am. Don't punish me like this. My car's everything. I need it for the kids, for work, for everything. Please, please don't let them take it. There it was, the cracks in her smugness, the panic creeping in through her perfect facade. For years, she'd sneered at me, called me dramatic, spoiled, weak. But in that voicemail, she sounded anything but strong. She sounded small. I imagined her pacing her kitchen, the phone clutched in her hand, her voice breaking as she tried to spin her story. Her kids in the background asking why mommy was so upset. Her perfect little world wobbling on its pedestal. And for once, it wasn't me holding it up. I sat there quietly, my daughter on my lap, her tiny fingers grabbing at the strands of my hair. I kissed her head, breathing in her baby scent. Grounding myself in her innocence, Jessica's panic wasn't my burden, her consequences weren't my responsibility. For years, I had been her safety net, but what happens when the net disappears? The fall begins. By early afternoon, her desperation reached new heights. Jessica, 12:44 p.m. If they take my car, I'll lose my job. If I lose my job, I can't pay rent. If I can't pay rent, my kids and I will be out on the street. Is that what you want? To see your niece and nephews homeless? There it was, the ultimate weapon, not her suffering, but her children's, her kids, dragged into the war she started, used as shields for her mistakes. I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. She wanted me to feel guilty. To believe her downfall would also be her children's, but I knew the truth. Her kids weren't the ones who mocked. Me, her kids weren't the ones who handed my daughter a broken toy with a smirk. That was her. This was her. The final voicemail of the day came just before 3. Her voice was hoarse now, raw from crying or yelling. Maybe both. I get it, okay? I get it, you hate me. You think I deserve this? Maybe I do. But my kids don't. Don't punish them because of me. You've always been the responsible one, the smart one, the one who has it all together. Be that person now, please, please save me. I can't do this without you. Her words hung heavy in the silence of my living room. Save me. I can't do this without you. And that was the truth she'd never wanted to admit. Behind the smugness, behind the arrogance, behind the constant laughter at my expense, there had always been dependence. She needed me, far more than I ever needed her. I set the phone down, my daughter's tiny hands clapping against mine as she giggled at some game only she understood. Her joy was contagious, her innocence untouchable, and I realized something powerful in that moment. For years, I thought silence made me weak, that biting my tongue, swallowing my hurt, letting them laugh was the path of least resistance. But silence, when chosen, was not weakness. Silence was strength, silence was control, silence was power, and so, as Jessica's pleas filled the void, as her smugness crumbled into desperation, I did the one thing she never expected. I stayed silent. If Jessica's panic was loud, chaotic, and frantic, my parents' was quieter at first, but in its quietness, it was heavier. Because unlike Jessica, who screamed about her car, my parents' foundation was their home, and when I froze the monthly deposits, the $800 I'd been sending every month like clockwork, their foundation trembled. The first message came from Mom. Late in the afternoon, Mom, 4:02 p.m. Sweetheart, I think there's some confusion. Our account is showing a block on the automatic payments. Maybe it's just a bank error? Can you check on your end? Confusion. That was her word. Not anger, not panic, not yet. Just the thin hope that this was some kind of mistake. But it wasn't. And she knew it. By evening, the confusion had turned to worry. Mom, 6:14 p.m. We've been relying on that money for the mortgage and utilities. Your father's pension barely covers groceries. You know this. Why would you do something so cruel? Cruel. That word sat heavy on the screen, as though generosity, once expected, had somehow turned into an obligation. Then came Dad's turn. His words were sharp, prideful, but underneath the bark, I could hear the cracks forming. Dad, 7:01 p.m. We raised you better than this. Cutting us off? After everything we've done for you? You're proving you're selfish, ungrateful, spoiled. If this house falls apart, it'll be on your head. Ungrateful. Always ungrateful. I stared at his message, and for a moment I almost laughed. Because the truth? The house was still standing because of me. Month after month, year after year, I had been quietly plugging the holes in their sinking ship. And now, with one press of a button, I had stepped aside, and the water was pouring in. By nightfall, the guilt came pouring in. Thick and heavy. Another voicemail from Mom. Her voice trembled, soft, almost breaking. Honey, we're scared. We don't have savings. We've been counting on your help. You know that. The bank's already called about a late fee. I don't know what we'll do if we fall behind. Please, baby, don't do this to us. Then a text moments later. Mom. I ruined the cake, I admit it. But isn't this punishment too much? We're your parents. We've given you everything we could. Now you're turning your back on us when we need you most? Their voices blended together in my head. The guilt, the shame, the endless attempts to twist the story. Mom, the martyr clutching her pearls, framing herself as the helpless victim of my cruelty. Dad, the patriarch, puffing up his pride even as his world threatened to collapse around him. But behind their words, behind their anger and pleas, I heard the truth. They needed me. They had been leaning on me more than they'd ever admitted, and without me, they were crumbling. Another voicemail came from Dad later that night. This time his voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't commanding. It was low, almost weary. I worked my whole life to keep this family together, to put a roof over our heads. And now you'd let it all fall apart? Over a cake? Do you want to see us lose our home? Do you want that on your conscience? There it was again. The same refrain. Over a cake, as if all of this started and ended with frosting on the floor, as if the years of mockery, the endless disrespect, the constant dismissal of my sacrifices had never existed. It wasn't about the cake. It had never been about the cake. The cake was just the moment the mask slipped. The moment I finally saw the truth. That they didn't respect me. That they never did. They only respected what I gave them. I sat there in the quiet of my living room, my daughter curled up in my arms, her little breath warm against my skin, and I realized something. For years, I had been the silent benefactor, the daughter who fixed, who paid, who smoothed over every crack, and they had taken it all. The money, the support, the sacrifices, and turned it into expectation. Not gratitude, never gratitude, just expectation. And now, stripped of it, they weren't angry at losing me. They were angry at losing the comfort my silence had bought them. By midnight, the last message of the day came through. Mom, 11:57 p.m. Sweetheart, I don't know how much longer we can do this without you. Please, think about your father. Think about us. We're your family. Doesn't that mean anything? I stared at her words until the screen dimmed. Family. They loved to use that word. They clung to it like a shield. A sword, a justification for every wound they inflicted. But family without respect wasn't family. Family without love wasn't family. Family without gratitude wasn't family. It was just control, and I was done being controlled. I kissed my daughter's forehead, whispering softly so only she could hear. We'll be okay. We don't need them. Not anymore. And in the silence that followed, I felt lighter than I had in years. If my parents' pleas were heavy with guilt, and my sister's panic was sharp with desperation, then Uncle Bob's response was something else entirely. It was nerve. Pure brazen nerve. The same man who had been clapping like a fool during Dad's cruel toast. The same man who shouted, "Here, here!" as though humiliating me in front of my entire family was some kind of noble act. Now had the audacity to message me about the cruise. Not an apology, not remorse, not even shame, just entitlement. The message came mid-morning, right after I had finished feeding my daughter her Mickey Mouse pancakes. Uncle Bob, 10:32 a.m. Hey, so I heard about the cruise thing. Rough situation. But listen, since Mom and Dad can't swing it, maybe you could just spot me the money for my ticket? I already took the time off work and told my boss I'd be gone. Don't want to waste my vacation days, you know? I blinked at the screen, stunned for a moment. Then I laughed. Actually laughed out loud, because the sheer audacity of it was almost unbelievable. This man, who mocked me, who cheered when my father called me a show-off, who grinned at my humiliation, now thought I'd hand him thousands of dollars for his personal vacation plans? It was like watching someone spit in your face and then immediately ask for a drink of water. But it didn't stop there. Another message followed. Uncle Bob, 10:45 a.m. Look, I know you're mad about the cake, but you can't punish the whole family forever. It's not like I knocked it over. I was just trying to lighten the mood, you know? You're too sensitive sometimes. Anyway, if you can just cover my spot, I'll pay you back eventually. Promise. Promise. The word dripped with insincerity. Bob's promises were like dollar store toys. Cheap, flimsy, already broken before they left the package. I knew he'd never pay me back. He never had. As the morning stretched on, his messages piled up. Uncle Bob, 11:12 a.m. You know, your dad's really upset. Maybe if you did this one small thing, it would smooth things over with him. Think of it as an investment in family peace. Uncle Bob, 11:29 a.m. Besides, you make good money. What's 15 grand to you? I'm stuck here trying to get by, and you're canceling cruises like it's nothing. Doesn't seem fair, does it? There it was. The resentment, the hidden belief that my success, my hard work, my savings somehow belonged to all of them. That because I owed. Never mind the years of sacrifice. Never mind the endless bills I quietly paid, the support I gave, the debts I covered. In their eyes, I was a walking safety net. A human ATM, and Bob wasn't even subtle about it. But the best, or worst, came later that afternoon. Uncle Bob, 1:02 p.m. All right, last try. I already told some friends I was going on this trip. Can't really back out now without looking dumb. If you could just wire me the money directly, I'll handle the booking myself. That way no one else even needs to know. Just between us, I stared at those words and felt a strange mix of disgust and amusement. This wasn't about family, it wasn't about peace, it wasn't even about the vacation. It was about him, his pride, his ego. His image, the same ego that made him laugh when I was humiliated, the same pride that swelled when he cheered for my father's cruel words. Now, stripped of the cruise, he was scrambling to save face. And in his mind, I was still the solution. I didn't reply. Not once. Instead, I scrolled back to the memory of his smug face at the party, beer in hand, grinning as he watched my daughter cry in her high chair, and I let that image burn away any temptation to feel pity, because Uncle Bob didn't want peace, he didn't want family, he didn't want forgiveness, he wanted a free vacation, and he thought I was still the fool who'd give it to him, but he was wrong. This time, the only trip Uncle Bob was taking was straight into disappointment. That evening, another voicemail arrived. His voice was irritated now, no longer pretending to be reasonable. You know what? Forget it. I don't even care about the cruise. I just thought you'd want to fix things with your parents. But clearly you don't care about family. Don't come crying to me when you realize you've burned all your bridges. Bridges. Another favorite word of theirs. As if I was the one who burned them. As if their mockery, their cruelty, their years of disrespect hadn't been gasoline waiting for a match. I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped standing on it. And for the first time in my life, it felt good to let it collapse. People always say that everyone has a breaking point, a final straw, a moment when enough is truly enough. And for me, it wasn't really the cake. It wasn't even the laughter or the mocking or the dollar store toy. It was the pattern, the years and years of patterns. I grew up learning that in my family, kindness was weakness, that generosity was expected, not appreciated, that if I succeeded, it was bragging, and if I struggled, it was my own fault. As a teenager, when I saved up for my first car, I remember Dad saying, "Don't get too proud of yourself. Plenty of kids drive nicer cars than this." When I graduated with honors, Jessica joked, "Guess we know who the teacher's pet was." And when I got my first real job, Mom whispered to my aunt, "She's always been a little show-offy, hasn't she?" Every achievement I had was downplayed. Every effort I made was brushed off. And yet, When the bills came due, when the debts piled up, when the house was on the brink, suddenly my success mattered. Suddenly my hard work had value, not as something to celebrate, but as something to take. I became the fixer, the rescuer, the silent provider. When Jessica's credit tanked, I co-signed her car loan. When my parents fell behind on their mortgage, I stepped in. When holiday trips became too expensive, I covered the difference, and every single time, I told myself I was doing it for family. Because family comes first, right? But here's the truth. It wasn't family I was saving, it was their pride. I was cushioning their mistakes so they could keep pretending they had it all together. I was funding their lives so they could keep mocking mine. And that's why the birthday party cut so deep, because I had poured myself into that. Every balloon, every decoration, every detail of that cake was chosen with love for my daughter. And instead of celebrating with me, instead of appreciating even a fraction of the effort, they tore it down, literally, figuratively, completely. The mocking laughter, the smug faces, the cruel toast. It wasn't just about the cake. It was every graduation, every achievement, every moment of pride I had ever dared to feel. All mocked. All dismissed. All torn down. And this time, it wasn't just about me. This time, they mocked my daughter's day. Her joy, her memory. And that was my line, the one they couldn't cross. Because for the first time in my life, I looked around that room and realized they would never change. Not for me, not for her. And if I stayed silent, if I swallowed it all again, then I was teaching my daughter the same lesson I had been taught. That disrespect is love, that mockery is family, that silence is survival. And I refused. I refused to let her grow up believing that. So I snapped, not in a scream, not in a fight, not in a dramatic outburst, but in silence, in action, in power. Because sometimes strength doesn't look like shouting. Sometimes strength looks like pressing a button on your phone and walking away. Looking back, it still amazes me how steady my hands were when I canceled the cruise, how calm my breath was when I froze the payments, how quiet the room seemed as I picked up my daughter and walked out. It wasn't rage, it wasn't even sadness. It was clarity, pure, crystal clarity. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth of who they were, and more importantly, I saw the truth of who I was, not their fixer, not their wallet, not their scapegoat. I was a mother, I was strong, and I was done. People think strength is about fighting back, about shouting louder, pushing harder, matching cruelty with cruelty, but my strength wasn't in the fight, it was in the refusal to keep playing their game, the refusal to keep feeding a cycle that had drained me for years. I didn't just snap at a cake, snapped at a lifetime of disrespect. And for once, I didn't just absorb it, I broke it, I drew the line. And I chose my daughter and myself over the endless, hollow performance of family. That night, as the texts flooded in, as the calls rang out, as the guilt and anger poured from every corner, I felt a strange peace because no matter what they said, no matter how they twisted the story, I knew the truth. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't ungrateful. I was free. And freedom, I realized, was worth more than any cake, any cruise, or any hollow toast. If there's one thing my family loved almost as much as tearing me down, it was appearances. They loved looking like the close-knit family, the ones who stuck together, the ones who celebrated every holiday, every birthday, every vacation in style. They wanted people to envy us, to believe we were picture perfect. So when the fallout from the ruined birthday party spread through the family, they didn't just keep it quiet, they broadcasted it. It started with Jessica. Of course, she couldn't resist. The same sister who giggled while recording the cake's destruction now saw her chance to make me the villain. A day after the party, she posted a clip online. The moment my mom's elbow hit the cake, frosting tumbling, fondant princesses sliding to the floor. But she didn't post the aftermath. Not the laughter, not the cruel toast, not the dollar store toy. Instead, she captioned it. When your sister blows $800 on a baby cake, then throws a fit when it tips over. Sure overdramatic tar, you're spoiled. At first, the comments trickled in. Yikes, who spends that much on cake? LOL, she must be fun at parties. Some people don't know the value of money. Exactly the reaction Jessica wanted. Validation, agreement, fuel for her smugness. But then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tide began to turn. Someone asked, wait, why is everyone laughing when the cake falls? Isn't it the baby's birthday? Another chimed in, why is she recording instead of helping clean up? That seems mean. And then another, hold up, $800 on cake for your kid's first birthday isn't insane. People spend thousands on weddings all the time. Why is everyone mocking instead of supporting her? Within hours, the clip blew up, but not the way Jessica hoped. People began stitching the video, reacting with disbelief and anger. Strangers online were outraged, not at me, but at them. Comments poured in. Imagine laughing at a baby's ruined birthday cake. Trashy behavior? The sister recording instead of helping? That's the real embarrassment. The mom's elbow accidentally knocking it? Didn't look like much of an accident to me. Jessica had wanted to humiliate me. Instead, she had exposed them. Then came Dad. Always the proud patriarch. He couldn't let his reputation take the hit, so he made a Facebook post, a long rant about ungrateful children, about how he and Mom had sacrificed everything, and how I had cut off the family over a cake. He expected sympathy. He expected his friends to rally behind him. But the replies weren't what he wanted, and comment read, wait, your daughter was paying your bills? And you're mad she stopped? Sounds like you were taking advantage. Another, sir, with respect. If you mocked your daughter at her child's birthday, I'd say she has every right to walk away. And the one that stung the most. Real men don't humiliate their daughters for trying to give their kids a special day. They support them. Mom tried her own spin, too. She posted a tearful selfie. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, captioned, "Sometimes our children forget everything we did for them, and they punish us for being imperfect parents." My heart is broken. At first, some of her friends responded with sympathy, but then someone, a mutual acquaintance who'd clearly heard more than Mom wanted, commented publicly, "Didn't your daughter cover your mortgage for years?" Imperfect parents don't usually rely on their kids to survive. And just like that, the mask slipped. The backlash spread quickly. Their friends whispered. Their coworkers asked questions, even distant relatives, who normally stayed quiet, chimed in with things like, "I always wondered why she did so much for you guys." It was as if, once the story cracked open, everyone saw through them. The perfect facade was gone, the image shattered, and the best part? I hadn't said a single word. Meanwhile, Jessica's clip kept spiraling online. People dug into her profile, scrolling through her posts. They found pictures of her posing with her BMW, the one she couldn't afford without my cosign. They found posts mocking me in the past, bragging about hand-me-down gifts she'd given me, and the internet. Relentless as it is, piece the puzzle together, she's the real mooch. No wonder her sister cut her off. Bet she'll lose that car soon too, and I didn't even have to confirm it. They figured it out on their own. Uncle Bob wasn't spared, either. Someone shared screenshots of his comments at the party, bragging about how funny Dad's toast had been. The same Uncle Bob who then, shamelessly, tried to beg me for cruise money, and the internet roasted him alive. Claps when the cake falls, begs when the cruise gets canceled. What a clown! Uncle Bob is the type to show up empty-handed but expect first-class treatment. For once, the spotlight wasn't on me, it was on them, and it was brutal. I watched all of it quietly, not gloating, not celebrating, just watching. Because after years of being their scapegoat, after years of being the punchline of their jokes, after years of swallowing humiliation in silence, the world finally saw the truth. I didn't have to shout. I didn't have to explain. I didn't have to justify myself. They had exposed themselves, and the world had judged them accordingly. For the first time, I felt a different kind of freedom. Not just freedom from them, but freedom from the need to defend myself. Because the truth was out there, now, and it was louder than any of their lies. The morning after the chaos, after the buzzing phone, after the endless stream of texts and calls, the house was finally quiet. Just me and her, my little girl, her actual birthday. No crowd, no mocking laughter, no dollar store gifts wrapped in torn bags, just the two of us. I woke up early, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. For once, there was no pressure, no family watching my every move, waiting for me to stumble. No stage to perform on, only the soft morning light spilling across her crib, her tiny fingers curled into fists, her chest rising and falling with steady, peaceful breaths. I leaned down, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Happy birthday, princess." And for the first time since the party, my chest didn't feel heavy. In the kitchen, I pulled out the ingredients I had bought weeks earlier, just for fun, not a castle cake, not fondant figurines or glittering tears, just flour, eggs, butter, and a box of pancake mix. Because today, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't putting on a show. I wasn't spending money to prove love. Today, it was about us. As the skillet warmed, I poured the batter in slow circles, shaping them carefully. 2 big circles for ears, 1 large one for the head, Mickey Mouse. She didn't need a castle cake to feel loved. She just needed me, and that was something no one could ruin. The pancakes bubbled, filling the kitchen with the sweet smell of vanilla. I hummed softly as I worked, the tune of a lullaby I'd sung to her 100 times before. And when I plated them, stacking the ears just right, I smiled. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was ours. She stirred awake right as I finished, her little eyes blinking open, her smile wide and toothless. I scooped her up, held her against my hip, and carried her to the table. "Look what Mommy made for you," I said softly. Setting the plate down in front of her high chair, her tiny hands slapped the tray in excitement, eyes wide at the silly pancake face. And in that moment, watching her squeal, watching her reach, watching her delight in something so simple, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I fed her small pieces, one by one, laughing as she smeared syrup across her cheeks, babbling happily. And I thought about the day before, the ruined cake, the laughter, the cruel words, and suddenly it all felt so far away. Because here, in this moment surrounded by nothing but love, I realized what family really was. Not the ones who mocked, not the ones who demanded, not the ones who measured my worth by the money I gave them. Family was this: her, me. Our quiet morning, sticky fingers and sweet pancakes. For so long, I had been chasing their approval, pouring myself into extravagant gestures, hoping one day they'd look at me and finally say, "We're proud of you." But they never did, and they never would. And the truth was, I didn't need them to. Because my daughter's smile, her laughter, her arms reaching for me, that was enough. More than enough. After breakfast, I carried her outside into the yard. The sun was bright, the air warm. I spread out a blanket and set her down among her toys. She giggled. Clapping her hands, chasing bubbles I blew into the breeze. Her joy was pure, untouched by bitterness, untouched by cruelty. And as I watched her, I promised myself something: that she would never feel what I felt growing up, that she would never doubt she was loved, that no one, not even my family, would ever make her feel small in her own celebration. Her childhood would be safe. Her birthday would be hers. And if that meant cutting ties, if that meant walking away, if that meant being the villain in their story, and so be it. Because in her story, in her eyes, I would always be the hero. Later, as she drifted off to her afternoon nap, her sticky hand curled around my finger, I sat there in the stillness, and I realized something profound. I hadn't lost family. I had found it. Not in the people who shared my blood, but in the little girl who shared my heart. And as long as I had her, I wasn't missing a thing. That night, when the phone buzzed again, when the messages came flooding back in, I didn't even look. I didn't need to, because the only voice that mattered was the one babbling softly in the baby monitor. The only love that mattered was asleep in the next room. And for the first time in years, I smiled as I turned the phone off, because I finally understood. The best gift I could give my daughter wasn't castles or cruises. It was freedom. Freedom from toxicity. Freedom from mockery. Freedom from the chains that had bound me for too long. And on her first birthday morning, that's exactly what I gave her. There comes a moment in life when you finally realize you've been living for the wrong people. For years, I bent over backwards for my family. Every paycheck, every holiday, every loan, every favor I gave without question. I convinced myself it was love. That one day, they would see my sacrifices and finally respect me. But here's the truth. People who mock you while taking from you don't love you. They love what you give them. And when the giving stops, so does their loyalty. The birthday party proved it in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. My own mother laughing as she destroyed my daughter's cake, my sister recording my humiliation for entertainment, my father raising a glass to toast his own cruelty, calling me naive in front of everyone. And the rest? They clapped. They cheered. They played along. Not one person stood up for me. Not one person said this isn't right. That was my breaking point, because if you don't draw the line, people will keep walking over you like a doormat. And I had been a doormat for far too long. When I canceled the cruise, pulled my money back, froze the payments on their mortgages, car notes, and debts, I thought I'd feel guilty. I didn't. Instead, I felt free. The phone calls, the texts, the desperate pleas, they weren't about me. They were about what I could do for them. Please, we're family. Don't punish everyone over a little joke. You're overreacting. You know we need you. But I realized something powerful. Family isn't supposed to feel like chains around your neck. It isn't supposed to drain you dry, make you small, or laugh at your pain. Family is supposed to love you, respect you, protect you, And if the people you call family can't do that, then they don't deserve the title. The day after, when I watched my daughter clap her hands at Mickey Mouse pancakes, syrup smeared across her cheeks, I understood what real love looked like. Pure, innocent, gentle. Love that doesn't keep score, doesn't demand repayment, doesn't make you feel like you're never enough, and I promised her something in that moment. That I would never let her grow up thinking love had to hurt. That birthdays were meant to be battles. That the price of belonging was constant sacrifice. She would grow up knowing love as laughter, as comfort, as safety, not as mockery, not as control, not as pain disguised as loyalty. So here's the lesson I walked away with. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they share your blood. Boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are survival, saying, no is not selfish, it's self-respect, and choosing peace over pleasing people who thrive on your misery. That's the bravest thing you'll ever do. I used to think walking away meant losing everything, but the truth is, walking away gave me back everything I was missing. My time, my peace, my dignity, my joy. And now, when I look at my daughter, I see the only audience that matters. She won't remember the ruined cake. She won't remember the cruel laughter. But she will grow up remembering that her mother was strong enough to stand up, walk out, and never look back. That's the legacy I want to leave her. Not money. Not cruises. Not endless favors. Strength. Self-respect. Peace. So if you're listening to this story, and you've ever felt like you had to buy love, beg for kindness, or sacrifice your own happiness to earn a seat at the table, let me tell you something. You don't. You deserve better. You deserve respect. You deserve love that feels safe, not love that feels like a transaction. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for your children, is to walk away. Because family isn't who laughs at your pain. Family is who celebrates your joy. And in the end, I didn't lose a family. I found mine. Right here. In the sticky hands of a little girl who thinks Mickey Mouse pancakes are the greatest birthday gift in the world. And honestly, she's right.